There is a woman sitting alone in her kitchen at 11 at night, staring at a text message that says, "Can we talk tomorrow?" 4 words. That's all it is. 4 ordinary, harmless words. And yet her chest is tight. Her hands are cold. Her mind is already writing the worst version of tomorrow over and over on a loop she cannot switch off. She does not know why. Nothing is actually wrong. No one has told her anything bad. But her body has already decided that something terrible is coming, and it will not listen to reason. This is not anxiety in the way most people talk about anxiety. This is something older, something that was installed a long time ago, in a much smaller body, in a much more dangerous world. And by the end of this video, you are going to understand exactly where reactions like this come from, why they refuse to go away, no matter how hard you think your way out of them. And most importantly, what it actually takes to finally quiet them down. Because there is a hidden architecture running underneath the surface of millions of adult lives. And once you see it, you will never look at your own reactions the same way again. Let's go back to where it starts. Somewhere, right now, a child is lying awake, listening to voices in another room, trying to guess from the tone alone whether tonight is going to be a calm night or a bad one. This child is not thinking about homework or friends or cartoons. This child is doing something far more urgent. This child is trying to predict danger before it arrives. Because in this house, danger does not always announce itself. Scientists have a name for what happens inside a child's body when this becomes a daily pattern. They call it toxic stress. And it is fundamentally different from the ordinary stress that helps a person grow. Ordinary stress. A hard exam, a tough tryout, a difficult conversation, actually strengthens a developing brain, the same way lifting a weight strengthens a muscle. There is tension, and then there is relief. And the nervous system learns, I can handle hard things. That's healthy stress. That's growth. Toxic stress is the opposite. Toxic stress is what happens when the tension never resolves, when the danger is real or constant or unpredictable, and there is no steady adult there to help the child's body come back down to calm. Imagine an alarm system installed in a house, but the alarm has no off switch. It just keeps ringing and ringing and ringing, flooding the entire building with chemicals meant for short bursts of emergency, not for years of daily life. Researchers at Harvard Center on the Developing Child have spent decades studying exactly this, and what they found is almost impossible to overstate. Prolonged activation of a child's stress response system without a buffering adult to help regulate it physically alters the architecture of the developing brain. Not metaphorically, physically. The regions responsible for emotional regulation, impulse control, and decision-making develop differently under chronic threat than they do under safety. A child raised in unpredictability is not being dramatic when they grow into an adult who cannot relax. Their nervous system was quite literally built for a different environment than the one they live in now. And here's the part that should stop you cold. The child never knows any of this is happening. There is no moment where a 6-year-old thinks, my cortisol levels are elevated and my prefrontal cortex is being shaped by chronic threat exposure. All the child knows is that the world feels unsafe and unpredictable, and that somehow, some way, they need to figure out how to survive inside of it, so they adapt. And what they build in the absence of safety is nothing short of remarkable. But before we get to what those adaptations look like in your life today, the ones that might be running you right now without your permission, you need to understand something. These weren't flaws. These were survival strategies built by a brilliant, terrified little mind with almost no power and almost no choices. And the first one is the one you might recognize the most. Picture a child at a family dinner table. On the surface, everything looks normal. Plates, food, conversation. But this child is not eating. This child is scanning, watching the exact angle of a parent's jaw, listening for the smallest shift in the pitch of a voice, tracking who reached for their glass a little too fast, who went quiet a little too suddenly. This child has learned, through repetition, that small signals predict big consequences. A tightened voice at 6 o'clock can mean a screaming match by 7. So the child becomes an expert. Not in math, not in reading, in threat detection, in micro-expressions. In the tiny, almost invisible tells that separate a peaceful evening from a terrifying one. This is not paranoia. This is pattern recognition, trained under fire, and it works. It buys the child precious seconds to prepare, to hide, to brace. In that house, at that age, this skill might be the closest thing to safety the child has. Now fast forward 20, 30, 40 years. That same nervous system is sitting in a modern office, in a meeting, and a manager's expression flickers for half a second. Everyone else in the room misses it completely. But this adult catches it instantly, and their stomach drops. Am I in trouble? Did I do something wrong? Why did their face change like that? The meeting continues normally. Nothing happens. But this person has already spent the next 2 hours quietly replaying every word they said, searching for the mistake that explains the look that, in reality, meant absolutely nothing. This is hypervigilance, and it does not turn off just because the danger is gone. The nervous system that once scanned a dinner table for warning signs is now scanning emails, texts, silences, tones of voice, the length of time it takes someone to reply. It cannot relax, because somewhere deep inside, relaxing still feels like exactly the moment when something bad is allowed to happen. Rest does not feel peaceful to this person. Rest feels like letting your guard down right before disaster. And so even in genuinely calm, genuinely safe moments, their body remains braced, waiting for a threat that, this time, isn't actually coming. But hypervigilance is only one version of this story. There is another child in another house who found a completely different way to survive. And this one might be even harder to recognize. Because on the outside, it looks like kindness. This child noticed something. When the adults around them were upset, things got dangerous. But when the adults around them were calm, things got safer. And so this child began to specialize, not in detecting danger, but in preventing it. Sensing the exact moment tension started to rise, and stepping in before it could become something worse. Softening a mother's mood with a joke. Distracting a father's anger with a question. Becoming, in effect, the emotional thermostat of the entire household, quietly regulating everyone else's feelings because their own safety depended on it. This child becomes extraordinarily skilled at reading rooms, at managing moods, at knowing exactly what someone needs before they even ask for it. And the world rewards this. Teachers call them mature. Relatives call them the responsible one. Nobody ever asks who is taking care of them because they never seem to need anything. That's the whole point. They learned early that their own needs were a liability, an extra weight that could tip an already unstable house into chaos. So they buried those needs so deep, so consistently, that eventually they stopped noticing they had them at all. Now picture this person as an adult. In relationships, they are the one who always compromises first. In friendships, they are the one everyone calls when they're falling apart, but no one thinks to call when they are. At work, they take on everyone's overflow, terrified that saying no will make them a burden, or worse, a target. They will apologize for things that were never their fault. They will absorb blame that was never theirs to carry, simply because keeping the peace, at any personal cost, still feels safer than risking conflict. Somewhere inside, a very old voice still whispers, "If I keep everyone happy, I stay safe." And that voice does not know the danger ended years ago. But there is a third path some children take, and it is, in its own way, the quietest tragedy of all. Some children look at an unsafe world and decide the safest move is to disappear. Not literally. They still sit at the table. They still go to school. But something inside begins to recede. They stop expressing big emotions because big emotions once made things worse. They stop asking for things because asking once led to disappointment or punishment. Slowly, methodically, without ever deciding to, they become smaller, quieter, less visible. Because a child who takes up no space cannot be a target. A child no one notices cannot be blamed. This adaptation can look, from the outside, like an easy kid, low maintenance, no trouble at all. But underneath, something painful is happening. A slow disconnection from their own inner world. And when this child becomes an adult, they often describe a strange, hollow feeling that follows them everywhere. Someone asks them what they want for dinner, and they genuinely don't know. Someone asks how they're feeling, and they draw a blank, not because they don't feel anything, but because the pathway between feeling something and naming it was severed a long time ago for their own protection. They can move through an entire life feeling like an observer of it, rather than a participant in it, quietly wondering why connection with other people, and even with themselves, always seems to happen just out of reach. 3 children. 3 completely different strategies. The watcher, scanning for danger. The peacekeeper, managing everyone's emotions but their own. The ghost, disappearing so thoroughly that even they lose track of themselves. 3 different survival stories. But underneath every single one of them, there is one shared wound. And it might be the most painful part of this entire story, because it doesn't just shape behavior, it shapes identity itself. When bad things happen to a very young child, over and over, that child's brain does something almost unbearably cruel to itself. Because a young child's mind is not yet capable of the more complex thought, the adults around me are struggling, and that is not about me. Instead, a much younger, much simpler belief takes root. This is happening because of me. If it's happening because of me, then I must be the problem. And if I'm the problem, then maybe if I were just better. Quieter, smarter, more lovable, less demanding, maybe it would stop. This is the birth of shame, and it is fundamentally different from guilt, even though the two get confused constantly. Guilt says, I did something bad. It is uncomfortable, but it is survivable, and more importantly, it is fixable. Guilt points at a behavior. It says, you can apologize, you can change, you can do better next time. Shame does not point at a behavior. Shame points at a self. Shame says, I am something bad. Not I made a mistake. I am the mistake. And a belief like that doesn't get fixed with an apology, because in the child's mind, there is nothing to apologize for. There is only something to hide. This is why so many adults who endure difficult childhoods cannot accept a compliment without feeling suspicious of it. Why criticism, even the smallest, most offhand comment, can sit in their chest for days, replaying like a verdict, while praise slides off them as if it were never said at all. It's not that they don't want to believe good things about themselves. It's that somewhere very deep down, a belief was planted decades ago that says good things aren't true, and that belief has never once been formally overturned. And here is where it gets almost eerie, because this old shame doesn't stay quietly in the past. It reaches forward into the present, uninvited, in a phenomenon that very few people even have language for. Imagine driving home from a completely uneventful day. Nothing happened. No argument, no bad news, nothing. And suddenly, out of nowhere, a wave hits you. Not a memory, a feeling, terror, smallness, a crushing, wordless sense that you are in danger, or that you are about to lose everything, or that you are fundamentally unworthy of the life you're living. There is no image attached to it. No specific moment you can point to. Just the raw, physical sensation of a threat, arriving with no evidence and no explanation. This is what's known as an emotional flashback, and it is one of the most disorienting experiences a person can have, precisely because it doesn't look like a memory. A normal memory comes with a clear sense of past tense. You are remembering something that already happened. But an emotional flashback strips away the story and leaves only the raw feeling, dropped directly into your present moment, indistinguishable from real, current danger. And because the mind desperately wants an explanation for such an overwhelming feeling, it starts searching the present for a reason. It reinterprets a friend's slightly delayed reply as rejection. It reinterprets a partner's quiet mood as the beginning of the end. It manufactures crises out of thin air simply to make sense of an old terror that has nothing to do with today at all. And this is where the story takes its most painful turn, because this old terror doesn't just distort how a person interprets a single moment. Left unaddressed, it starts to shape the entire direction of a person's life, especially the people they choose to let closest to them. There is a strange, uncomfortable truth about the human nervous system. It does not actually prioritize happiness. It prioritizes familiarity. And for someone who grew up inside chaos, unpredictability, or emotional instability, calm, steady, reliable love can feel, paradoxically, unsettling, almost suspicious. Some part of them is waiting for the other shoe to drop, because peace was never something they could trust to last. So without ever consciously choosing it, many people find themselves pulled, again and again, toward relationships that echo the exact instability they grew up in. A partner who runs hot and cold. A friendship defined by unpredictable warmth and sudden distance. Not because they enjoy the pain. No one enjoys the pain. But because their nervous system recognizes the rhythm. It says, this, at least, I know how to survive. Meanwhile, a calm, emotionally consistent partner can feel almost unfamiliar enough to trigger discomfort, even boredom, simply because there is no old, familiar alarm to respond to. Others take the opposite path entirely. Having lived through so much unpredictability as a child, they grow into adults who need to control everything. Every plan mapped out, every outcome anticipated. Spontaneity itself starts to feel dangerous because for them, the unknown has never once meant excitement. The unknown has only ever meant threat. Both paths, recreating the chaos or desperately controlling against it, are two different reactions to the exact same wound, and both are exhausting ways to live. Which raises the real question underneath everything we've covered so far. If all of this happened without your permission, is there any way to actually undo it? Here is where the story turns, because this is not a story with a hopeless ending. There is now a significant body of research, built on tens of thousands of adult participants, examining what are called adverse childhood experiences, or ACEs. And the findings are sobering. People who experience more hardship in childhood do show measurably higher rates of anxiety, depression, chronic illness, relationship difficulty, and more, sometimes 30 or 40 years later. That part is real, and it deserves to be taken seriously, not minimized. But here's the part that gets left out far too often. None of this is a life sentence. The very same brain that adapted to chaos in childhood retains, well into adulthood, something scientists call neuroplasticity, the capacity to form new pathways, new patterns, new defaults. The brain that learned to survive danger can also learn safety. It is not fast. It is rarely simple. It almost always benefits from real professional support, someone trained to help guide a nervous system through unlearning what it once had to learn just to make it through the day. But it is possible. Thousands of people, right now, are doing the quiet, unglamorous work of noticing an old reflex the moment it fires, the urge to apologize for nothing, the flinch before a text is even opened, the reflex to disappear rather than take up space. And instead of obeying it instantly, the way they always have, pausing, just for a second, long enough to ask, is this actually happening now? Or is this an old alarm going off in a house that isn't on fire anymore? That pause, small as it sounds, is where healing actually happens. Not in one dramatic breakthrough, but in hundreds of tiny moments of choosing a different response than the one your body begs you to make. Learning, slowly, that safety can be trusted, that people can, in fact, be steady, that your needs were never a burden, and were never something you had to earn permission to have, that you are allowed to exist fully without first proving your worth. The child who developed all of these defenses did not fail at anything. That child faced something no small mind should have had to face, and did the only thing that was possible at the time: survived it, using every tool available, with a resourcefulness that honestly deserves to be called heroic. That child was never the problem. That child was responding with remarkable intelligence to an environment that never should have demanded so much of them in the first place. And now, the adult that child grew into gets to do something that child never could. Rest. Set the alarm down. Let it finally turn off. If any part of this felt uncomfortably familiar, you are not alone, and you are not broken. You simply learned something a long time ago that your nervous system hasn't updated yet, and there is more to understand about exactly how that update happens, which is exactly what we're going to dive into next.